the issue 2 issue, and I have to tell you, I'm as confused as anybody. Can we start with Bob Sturdivant over there? And William, will you be our microphone person today? Thank you.
How's everybody doing? Always good to see you. Shakespeare said brevity be the soul of wit. So our group will have the recommendations of the Cincinnati Board of Education candidate report card. We'll have that for you next time. And we're also part of a forum on the 18th at the Pierson Academy, which will be there'll be a candidate forum, and we got a new idea for the candidate forum. The candidates will sit at tables, and we'll sit around 8 people at a table, and then there'll be a question, and then you can move from candidate to candidate. It's sort of like speed dating. So we'll see if that works out. That's the 18th. We'll have our report card in time for the early voting to begin, and I really encourage everyone to take advantage of early voting. It's a way to get your vote, make sure we can get it in the right column. So thank you.
Yeah. I wonder if anybody would like to join me to stand out on a busy corner for issue 2. If so, see me afterwards. A lot of cars go by and you'll see our signs.
Ooh. Are you for? I shouldn't have.
Stand out for issue 2 on corners.
This is it's a better time of the year to plant milkweed seed than in the spring. So I have some seed here if anybody would like to plant. This time of year, all you have to do is put a little soil over the seed, very little bit of soil over the seed in a sunny place. In the spring, you have to do more. I forget exactly, but
What are the advantages of milkweed?
oh, to attract the monarch butterfly.
Oh, nice.
Because the monarchs are endangered, there's an effort all over the country to increase the amount of milkweed.
Great.
I'll come to you at the end. I want some of those seeds.
Down with loyalty. Alberta, we missed you last week.
Well, thank you.
Don't let it happen again.
Oh, no. I have to miss you, and once more in October, I'm going to my 50th reunion for my Peace Corps, and it happens to be on the island of Hawaii. So,
Oh, that's an excuse. Okay. Well, it's just the season to be donating, and we're having a fundraiser for a Springfield Township trustee candidate. She's the only Democratic endorsed candidate. Chelsea's just, Rothschild is a super person, and we're having a fundraiser at my home this Sunday. If you want information, address, etc., please come by. We also have yard signs and flyers, and this could be a biggie. So, thank you.
Springfield. I live in Springfield Township. People don't know it because I'm right adjacent to Roselawn. I'm in Edgemont, 7 blocks of Springfield Township on the other side of 75.
I just felt like saying, where in the world is Alberta, San Diego?
Bennett.
Thank you. The 1963, John F. Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Act. It's the last major act he signed before he was killed. He was killed like 3 weeks afterwards. Prior to the Mental Health Act, Community Mental Health Act, individuals with mental illness were frequently locked away in asylums for life. 20, 30, 40 years was not unusual. The community mental health system in Hamilton County has a tax levy that's been operating since 1980. It's on the ballot again. It's issue 2. No, I'm sorry, it's issue 3. It's not issue 2. It's issue 3. And it won't raise taxes because it's been on the levy for the same amount for a number of years. So I just want to ask you all to please support the mental health levy, issue 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bennett. Any other announcements? Donna, Folk.
I don't live in Hamilton County, but on behalf of the elders, they have a levy on there too. I have a friend that works for Council on Aging, and I want to see the people support that. I know it's an increase, but it will help more seniors that way. Keep them in
There's
their
a
own.
senior levy.
Yep.
Ellen Beerhorst. Last night in Clifton was the formation meeting for the Clifton neighborhood team. And so that's a movement. Remember when Caleb Fox was here and he said, we got to go with neighborhood teams. This old precinct executive model doesn't work. And so anybody who's interested in the Clifton neighborhood team or wants to know about what we're up to, I'd be glad to talk about that.
What about Saturday night? How about Saturday night?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
On Saturday night at the Lloyd House in Clifton, we will have a fundraiser meet and greet for Tamaya Denard running for council. She started out in Sittenfeld's office and she's a peppy young African-American woman. And we're going to have the fabulous Public Figure Band with Bob Sturtevant. And,
Excellent.
And there will be food, snacks, drinks, and that's at 3901 Clifton Avenue at my house. The Lloyd House in Clifton. All those political signs and giant grasses right on the bend by Lafayette Avenue. I'm the one.
Go for it, Ellen.
At 5:30 to 7.
Excellent. Well done. I think that's it. Okay, make sure you take this home. Does everybody have a copy? If you don't have a copy, this tells you when the last day to register is on October 10th and tells you where you can register. You know you can register online. You can vote early at the Board of Elections, and that gives you the times. And down at the bottom in the small black print are the websites for the votehamiltoncounty.org, which gives you all the information about what's on your ballot in your place. So you can make up your minds ahead of time. There's also the Twitter and Facebook addresses. So please use that little piece of paper, and if you don't have one, get one. Without further ado, because I have two speakers today, and we are going for and against issue 2 with two people who really know what they can be informed, can really work with us in terms of how it's happening. We're going to go first with Victoria Zip. She is campaign manager for issue 2. She lives in the West Side. She's a local person. And Leo Pierson D'Cruz is a political regional director for the No campaign. Boy, we got the top guys here, folks. And he's from Northside, also a local person. So we're going to give them each 10 or 15 minutes, no questions while they're presenting, and then we'll have time for question at the end. You know what? These guys like each other. It is not, this is, Victoria's going to go first. When this was being set up, I understood that she had to get back at the end of the hour, and evidently she doesn't now, so, but she's going to go first anyway, because in case she, never mind. Okay, so Victoria Zip, will you come up and speak to issue 2 and for issue 2?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. I know you've heard about this issue in the past, and there's been a ton of information and interest in it, and so I'm happy to come back and answer questions and talk about it some more as it's become hotter and hotter issue. I'm always happy to talk to Democrats in Cincinnati. This is where I started organizing, and have many more memories actually of that building right next door. The last time I was working on issue 2, when we were defeating and repealing SB 5, and really glad about the activism that you push forward, and excited about what is built here in Hamilton County. So a little bit about issue 2, just to go back to the basics. What issue 2 actually does is it says it's a ballot initiative, it'll be up this year, and it says that when the state of Ohio is the ultimate payer for prescription medications, that the state of Ohio can pay no more than the lowest negotiated rate that the VA pays. So they can pay no more than the lowest known rate that the Veterans Administration pays. About 25 years ago, Congress saw that the VA and veterans were being price gouged by drug companies after the Gulf War, and they enacted a law that said that it gave the VA the ability to negotiate and also controlled prices that they received. What we're saying is that the state of Ohio, this is something that we know this system works. It's worked for 25 years. The drug companies are still making profits when they sell to the VA, and this is an opportunity for us to provide some regulation on pricing. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, why can't the state ledge do this? Why can't Congress do this? I think we all know Congress has been very busy trying to figure out a way to take health care away from 23 million people. I don't think they're going to work on this. Our state legislature hasn't taken up an issue around drug pricing for 10 years. We live in this system. I think we as progressives know. We live in a system where money has an outweighed effect on our politics. And what the drug companies do, it's the same way that they, right now the drug companies, and one of the things to understand is I know you've probably heard a lot more about the no side of this. That's because the drug companies are funding entirely the no campaign. They're paying for $2.4 million of TV advertising a week. They've spent more than $26 million so far on this campaign, on TV alone, not on the dozens and dozens of operatives and lobbyists that they've hired. And so, I can talk about who's funding the yes side too, and I want to, but I think one of the things we know is money has such a big influence in our politics. And the drug companies have perfected that. And they perfect it now in the way that they're running this campaign. By running television ads, by paying for research that they then push to doctors, and the doctors then push to their patients, and by lobbying, strongly to state legislators and to members of Congress. Does any of this sound familiar about how it's caused another problem? These are the same companies that are being sued right now by our state for causing the opioid crisis. This bill does not address the opioid crisis. I say we can't fix all the problems that the drug companies have made, but this is something we can do to help control prices. Right now what we see is that the drug companies raise prices to as much as the market will bear. That's their job. They are profit-making companies. That is their role. That is their responsibility to their shareholders. And that is who the responsibility is to. It's to their shareholders. They're profit-making companies. And their job, and this is what you hear when people like Martin Shkreli goes and testifies to Congress. Okay, he's like the face of this, right? He's like a little out there that he'll actually say it. But what he says is the same thing that the CEO of Mylan says when she goes to testify in front of Congress. And they say, why did you raise the price of EpiPens 300%? And she's like, why did you get $97 million as compensation for doing that? And she's like, because that's my role as a CEO of a drug company, is to maximize profits, so the profits go to shareholders. Drug companies' role is not to maximize patient health. It's not to make the market function well. It is to raise prices as high as they can go. And that's what they've done. That's what the system that almost all of us live under is a system where drug companies raise the prices to as high as the market will bear. And that's where we are. They profit greatly from that. They profit more than almost any other industry, including financial services. They have higher profit margins. That's how they're able to afford advertisements on TV, how they're able to afford lobbyists, how they're able to afford all of the things that they do to keep the special interests and keep this system growing. That's the system we have. And it's the same system that's funding issue 2, the no campaign on issue 2. So I just wanted us all to be on the same page of as progressives, we see what's happening. We know that you look behind, who's the money behind an issue? So the main thing that issue 2 is that it will put a cap. It'll put a cap on what the state of Ohio pays and therefore save taxpayers money. So the people who directly benefit from lower drug prices will be the 4 million people, including 164,000 children, for whom the state of Ohio is the ultimate payer of their prescription medication. That includes Medicaid recipients, it includes state employees and state retirees. What it does for everyone is save taxpayer money. It means that taxpayer money, and the estimate is $400 million a year, which is also the shortfall that we've seen that's been cut from local government funds. that money does not go to the excess profits of drug companies, does not go to more lobbyists, does not go to more ads, does not go to CEO compensation, but goes back into our communities to pay for the things we need. The other thing, so a little bit about who supports this. I'll pass around this lit, maybe I'll just pass it around. But on the back of here, we have a list of endorsements. I'm gonna pass this around. We have a list of endorsements. Bernie Sanders is one of the big endorsements of this. Dennis Kucinich is right now touring the state. Nina Turner, Our Revolution, our endorsers. Max Cleland, who's a former Director of Veterans Affairs. The Ohio Academy of Family Physicians, sort of a group of family physicians here in Ohio who serve patients. National Nurses United, who's the largest union of bedside nurses in the country. Vote Vets, a national organization that promotes engagement for veterans on policy issues that matter to them. And a lot of Cuyahoga Democratic Party endorsed as well. So a lot of, I think, the people that we know as progressives champion progressive values and stand up to corporations when there's issues of putting profits over people. The proponents of this are 4 Ohioans. 3 of them, all 4 of them work in the AIDS service space up in Cleveland. 3 of them work for the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which is the major donor behind this. I'm sure if you've watched network television, you've heard the name Michael Weinstein. Michael Weinstein currently has higher name recognition than most of our candidates for governor in the state, thanks to the drug company's ads. What the AIDS Care Foundation, he runs AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and they're putting a lot of the most of the funding behind the yes side. So AIDS Care Healthcare Foundation is a nonprofit. It is serves AIDS patients around the world in 15 states and 39 countries, including Ohio. So they have clinics in Columbus, they have clinics in Cleveland. What they do is provide health services. They help people get access to their medicines. They help people, also caseworkers, helps people get housing, help people get food. So this guy who's been demonized, and he takes strong positions, but that's the organization he runs, and he does it around the world, and they serve over 800,000 patients around the world who have AIDS and HIV, and also help them with the other elements of their care to help them get healthy, to live productive lives. So they work here in Ohio, and so they sort of see this as part of their mission. Just like, they're actually a similar size as Planned Parenthood. And in a lot of ways, I think the model is very similar. They provide care, and they take in some of the revenue that they take in. They help other people who can't afford the care to get the care. Similar model. And also, they engage in advocacy. And just like Planned Parenthood say, we can't help more people unless the policy changes. So the reason they're in this is because it is an extension of their mission. To say we can't help more people unless prices are lower, because right now, a lot of the patients they serve, in addition to having HIV, also have hepatitis C. There's a cure for hepatitis C. There's a drug that you can take, and it cures hepatitis C. It was developed by research that the U.S. Army did, and then given and sold to this company. And does anyone want to guess how much it costs, this pill? $90,000 a year, and $1,000 a day this pill costs. So, if you are an aid organization, if you're a nonprofit organization that's trying to help patients who have this disease, you can help a lot more patients if they're buying that medication at the VA rate than if you're buying it at that retail rate. So that's really, I do not have that on the top of my head, but thank you. The VA rate on average is about 24% less than the retail rate. They have a listing of 17,000 medications on their formulary with prices on those medications. That is actually public information that you can go up and we can look that up. So I think that we went through the issues. I think there's a lot of things that we talked about that you see on the ads, and I look forward to taking your questions. But I think the biggest thing I want to say is I think all of us can look at this system and say this system does not work. The system we have now is a system where drug companies can charge the maximum price they possibly can that the market will bear. They're making threats that if prices go down for some people, they're going to go up for other people. If anyone in this room believes they have not already lifted the prices to the maximum amount that they can get, I don't know what to tell you. Like, EpiPens would not cost $600+ if that was not the case. Like, they have found that. And so if we squeeze the balloon, the balloon is going to pop. And by putting pressure on this system, we say, no, there are limits to how much money this industry can make. And we're saying, like, if our government, if our Congress, if our state legislature is too enthralled by the lobbyists to make a change on this, the people of Ohio can make a change to the system. So I look forward to your questions. I know this is a hotly debated topic, and I look forward to talking about it more. I'll pass it over to Leo.
Tell me they were friends.
Hi folks, thank you for being here today. My name is Leo D'Cruz, and on any other election cycle. Up. Yeah, how about that?
Thank
How's
you.
that? In any other election cycle, Victoria and I are colleagues actually. So this is interesting and awkward for at least me, maybe both of us. Yeah. So we try to initiate and end with hugs. That usually works out. Look. I'm up here today on behalf of the Grassroots Coalition that stretches from here to Cleveland, up to Dayton, up to Toledo, down to Columbus, basically across the state. And our coalition is held together by healthcare advocates, civil rights groups, business organizations, and veterans. There's basically broad consensus once you get past the rhetoric and the emotion, which I think is valid. I'm not here to invalidate that. But the coalitions that have looked at this, studied it, and taken a step back from it and said, okay, let's analyze this from a non-emotive point of view and a more analytical point of view. That coalition has determined that this is risky, that this is costly, and that this is unworkable. Our coalition, just to name a few partners, includes organizations locally, in fact, like Caracol. Show of hands, who knows about Caracol? Okay, so there's been a lot of talk about AHF, right, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and them being, this kind of altruistic organization that's out there fighting on behalf of the HIV/AIDS communities across the state and across the world. But this is a $1 billion nonprofit, $1.3 billion nonprofit. It's not like a small nonprofit. Caracol is a small nonprofit by comparison. Caracol has been on the ground. This is their 30th year fighting. They started out fighting in the streets, on behalf of the HIV/AIDS community when Reagan was president, and basically disavowing that HIV was even an issue, right? And so they are the organization, they're the people that have been on the ground for 3 decades. And they're proponents and partners of the no side. They are against AHF. Why might they be against AHF? Well, I'll give you one reason. You tell me if this sounds altruistic. Michael Weinstein and AHF didn't file their paperwork on time with the state of Ohio. They have a history of non-compliance with state regulations, which didn't make the state, very lenient once that paperwork was filed late to say, oh yeah, don't worry about it, like just get it into us when you can. So they lost their funding. AHF, Michael Weinstein, sued the state of Ohio and blocked $24-point-some-odd million from going to every other organization in the state that was to receive funding to fight HIV/AIDS in the communities across the state. They blocked it. They said basically, oh, well, if we can't have it because we messed up, nobody else can have it. That doesn't sound to me like an altruistic organization. That sounds like folks out there doing things in their own interest for their best interests and ignore to hell with everybody else. To hell with the vulnerable populations in Cincinnati. To hell with the vulnerable populations up in Dayton. We want ours. That sounds like divisiveness. That doesn't sound like bringing folks together, taking care of them. So I want to put that out there to dispel this mythology of AHF as an altruistic organization that's just out there, you know, looking out for everybody's best interests except their own. So, so other folks, Caracol, they've been out there, like I said, the Ohio Nurses Association, the NAACP of Columbus, Stonewall Democrats of Columbus. Oh, recently the Teachers Federation, the Ohio Federation of Teachers, has become an advocate and a partner and an endorser of the No on Issue 2 campaign. These are not, by any stretch, conservative groups. I don't think any of us could argue that. These are folks that are our partners. These are folks that think deeply about the issues that I suspect everyone in this room cares about. And not just think, but act. So let's be clear about this. This isn't really about the pharmaceutical industry, and I'll get into why I believe that's the case in a second, in a more detailed way. This is about everyday Ohioans on whose behalf I have personally fought for over and over again. And I'm up here one more time doing the only thing I know how to do, which is to be honest, to speak up for the best interests of my fellow citizens and taxpayers across the state, even when that may not be the most popular path to take. So what is issue 2 from a policy perspective? What is it going to do? And who is it going to affect? Well, on its face, as Victoria said, this is going to handcuff, she didn't use these words, I'm using these words, handcuff the state of Ohio and force the state of Ohio to not be able to bargain for anything under that, beyond that 24% discount. The reality is that the VA doesn't get an average of 24% discount. The VA that 24% is a federal mandate. It's a cap not on the VA. It's a price control set on the pharmaceutical industry at the federal level. So that's not the same thing. That's like telling the VA they're not allowed to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies, that they're doing nothing to force the pharmaceutical companies to do anything. It's just pretending this kind of naive, economic theory, if you will, that the pharmaceutical industry is just going to voluntarily come along for the ride. And if everything Victoria said, if all the folks in here believe that the pharmaceutical industry is in it for business, then the logical extension of that argument is that they aren't going to voluntarily just negotiate to whatever we say or this issue says the state needs to negotiate to. So that's one thing to keep in mind. This is a cap on the state. Think of it as a block grant in that sense. Funding is capped. There's nothing to compel pharmaceutical companies to do anything here. So I want to make that very clear from a policy perspective. The real discounts then go beyond that 24%. The VA takes that 24% federally mandated discount and negotiates far below that. To the question about what that is, what those negotiations look like, we don't know. We can't just go online and find this information. The 24%, sure. Those voluntary ones, those are actually protected trade secrets that by law are hidden from transparency. They're not transparent to the public. So we don't know. So if the stated law here is to force the state of Ohio to negotiate to the lowest net price of whatever the VA pays, how do we do that if we don't even know what that is? That sets up a really interesting scenario for a lot of lawsuits, which will bring us to another point here soon enough. The VA themselves have come out, they came out when this was on the ballot in California last year and said that this will cost them about $4-ish billion and that they're going to have to pull from programming to cover that shortfall elsewhere. unless somebody else believes that the current administration is going to come up with that money. I don't see that happening. So this is going to cost the VA money, and that's going to fall downhill to veterans. I'd be happy to answer any questions, to the best of my ability, of course. So that's the VA. That's not me. That's not Victoria. That's not the Yes campaign. That's not the No campaign. That is an independent study that hit last year in 2016, where, by the way, again, this was in California and it failed. 54 to 46 in California. Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that the most progressive state in the entire country, basically? It's a very highly educated state. The Yes side will tell you that's because the pharmaceutical companies ran an expensive and apparently a very dynamic campaign that apparently convinced all the progressives in California that they were right and the Yes side was wrong. I think that's selling constituents short. I think that here in Ohio, there in California, I think we've got people who understand that when you analyze something, that there better be some rigor to it. There better be some independent study out there that says a thing is going to do what it says it's going to do, instead of just saying it's going to do it, right? And so Californians voted this down. Who's involved in who's this directed at? This is actually directed at basically the Medicaid folks who fall under state programming. So Medicaid or any organization that receives their funding through the state. So that leaves out 2/3 of Ohioans. 2/3 of Ohioans are not covered under this immediately, but they could feel the negative effects of this, actually, the fallout, which are what we're calling unintended consequences, because I think that we're not arguing on principle here, we're arguing on the policy merit here. So who does that leave out? That leaves anybody who's on independent coverage out. If you fall under employer coverage, you're not included in this. If you are a retiree and you are covered under Medicare, not included. 2/3 of Ohioans. It's 7 million-ish people, not even included here. But the negative effects, rising costs, shrunken formularies, that could affect those 2/3 of people in a very negative way. Every children's hospital in the state of Ohio, by the way, is on the No campaign. There's a reason why all of these organizations that are actually Ohio organizations and not California organizations, there's a reason why they're on the No campaign. And a lot of these organizations advocate and fight for on a daily basis the most vulnerable populations across the state. Children, folks with HIV/AIDS, folks with cancer, a lot of folks that dealt with that in this room, I'm sure. You shrink formularies, in other words, you get rid of the entire arsenal of drugs that are at your disposal, you risk people's lives. That's not smart healthcare policy. The Yes side likes to talk about systems, because as long as they're talking about systems, they're revving up everybody's emotions. And I appreciate that. Emotions are important. There's nothing in what we're voting for in November, there's nothing in this that's going to change the system. I mean, what I've handed out actually has the ballot language in it, because I want everybody to read it. There's 2 points that you're voting on. Require the state of Ohio, including state departments, to not pay more than the prescription drugs than the price paid by the U.S. Veterans Department, which we don't know what that is. And this other point here about the petitioners, establish that the individual petitioners responsible for proposing the law have a direct and personal interest, the word is stake, in defending that law. So effectively, we're writing a blank check for these petitioners, 3 of whom work for Michael Weinstein, work for AHF. I don't know that I do know, we've never put in the Ohio Revised Code anybody's individual interest. Because the common sense would tell us that this is about, our Ohio Revised Code is about all Ohioans. And that if we're going to put individual interest in there, that's probably a red flag for inappropriate. I'll stop and we'll answer questions. But yeah, I'm happy to answer.
We can't hear.
Would you like,
Repeat the question.
would you like to hear a rebuttal, or you want to do questions?
I want to hear what the
Rebuttal, hands for rebuttal.
I'm gonna be quick, and maybe this will answer some of the questions you would have had. One piece is, I do want to address the lawsuits. I tend to not talk about it proactively, even though they're gonna talk about it, because it's a red herring. It's the one thing in this like ballot language that the other side fought for to make sure the voters saw, because they knew they were gonna run on it. What this language does is say that, and the reason it's in there, I think the first thing is why it's in there. There have been states where voters chose a ballot initiative, they voted yes on it, and then afterwards the Attorney General would have defended. So the reason language there is to compel the Attorney General to defend a law. It does say that the cost only reimburses reasonable costs. The proponents have said they will only bring this forward if the Attorney General doesn't defend it. So like that's a great scare tactic that the drug companies use in their ad campaigns, their talking points, but like that is only there to compel our Attorney General, who I think we know sometimes doesn't do what we'd like him to do, to make sure he defends the will of the voters if and only if this is passed by the voters. So that's why that's there. And the other piece I particularly thought it was helpful to talk about was the piece about veterans. There's nothing in this legislation that would raise prices on anyone. All this would do is lower prices that the state of Ohio pays for the people for whom it purchases prescription medication. I am quite confident that what this does, and this is, when we talk about, why would the drug companies sell prescription medications to Ohioans if they're not getting as much money as they were getting before? Has anyone here known people who've taken buses to Canada to buy prescription drugs?
Yeah.
Why does Canada have lower prices?
They negotiate.
Because they negotiate and because they set limits on what they'll pay. I mean, Canada's getting half as much. I mean, other countries are paying a fraction of what the U.S. is paying. They make money, the drug companies make money when they sell drugs to the VA. They make money when they sell drugs to Canada. They make money when they sell drugs to Egypt. There's no reason to think that they're not going to make some profit just because they can't make all the profit they used to. And I think that is just, thinking about the economic theory behind this and just thinking about them as profit maximizing organizations. And that's what they do. That's why they spent $110 million in California. And so I agree that $110 million can confuse people no matter who they are. And anyway, so I want to do questions, but I think those pieces in particular were helpful.
Look, we have 3 Medicaid directors under both Republican and Democratic governors here in Ohio that say this can't work, this isn't going to work. There is not one independent study anywhere in this country that has come out and said, yeah, they're on the right track. They're definitely going to be able to bring down your drug prices. Here's our modeling. Here's what we came up with. We're not part of either campaign. We think the yes side is going to come out on top on this. From an analytic perspective, not one. Every major newspaper in California, progressive, conservative, middle of the road, endorsed the no side in California. Those folks aren't getting paid. Here in Ohio, Plain Dealer, Akron Beacon, Columbus Dispatch have all endorsed the no campaign. We're setting up a similar dynamic. The yes side likes to say all these people who are progressives are on board with the yes campaign. Where's Sherrod Brown? He's a progressive, last I checked. He's not endorsing the yes campaign. Where's the Ohio? And pardon me, but I give you the floor. Please give me the floor. Where's the Democratic Party of Ohio? Not endorsing. Where's the Hamilton County Democratic Party? Not endorsing. The reason is that this is bad policy. That was the reason in California, that's the reason here. Victoria and I we have zero argument on principle. Zero. But I'm the only one talking about the policy effects here, the details, the organizations that have analyzed this and have looked into what the possible effects are. The yes side cannot tell you with anything close to a guarantee. All it is hypotheticals. Well, maybe this will happen. We think this will happen. That's a lot of guts to put out there when you've got vulnerable populations across the state that are reliant on the current situation, and that the possibility, if the possibility could go up, then it could go down as well.
Question. I just have a very important question. I'm a no vote, by the way. Then can you please explain why the pharmaceutical companies are pumping so much money into the advertising? Because I think they're very evil. I'm against pharmaceutical companies. So I want to know why they are so on the no vote.
Well, I think that one thing is clear, this is an attack. It's an assault on the pharmaceutical industry, right?
Yay for that.
So I think anything that's perceived as an assault by the pharmaceutical industry on the pharmaceutical industry is going to be fought tooth and nail. That is the case. I think that was probably the case in California. That's the case here. So I think that's the very clear. That's the most direct answer that I can give you. If the pharmaceutical companies, if any industry out there saw an assault on them, they would go into fight.
What's their interest?
I will also mention that there's a quote in the Pharma Exec magazine. There's a Pharma Exec magazine. They talked about the California measure last year, and they said if this passes, it will cause a crisis in price aid. It will cause prices to go down in other states. There will be contagion. So I think they very clearly. Anyway, I think that's one statement you can look at. It's published online where they said, if this happens in one state, we know that we will see prices go down in other states too.
That said, I want you to keep focused on the 80 organizations. The 80 organizations that are part of the coalition that is the No campaign. 80 organizations that are Ohio-based organizations, nonpartisan, across the board. That's who's fighting this.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
No more questions until we have the mic. That's it.
I have to say, given we had an earlier presentation a couple of months ago on this issue, I thought that one of the strongest points that was made then is that given the incredible power of dark money in our politics, we can't really trust even Democratic elected officials to be mainly interested in our best interest. Even, to be put it cynically, even if this thing fails once it's enacted, it still represents something like direct democracy, which is disappearing in this country completely. And I think the idea that this kind of issue is one of the very few ways we have left to have the mass of voters actually able to express a real opinion. Okay, one each.
Louder.
I'd like to know if you have any states that you can name the states where they fought this out and the AG would defend the law. And on your side, I'd like to ask, where can we find the hard information you're talking about? Because when I read the literature, I just logically, I can understand the pro. When I read the negative literature, it's full, just packed full of assumptions and emotive words. And I have yet to see anything in the literature that I've read on the no side that has been compelling.
So I'll just answer and then I'll give it over to Victoria. I'm happy, if you're not finding the answers that you need, I'm happy to provide you with my direct email. You can email me and I will point you to exactly, is to the best of my ability, to the answers that anything that I've said today is backed up by facts. So I can send you the facts of where the VA said whatever, where there's no independent studies, where those scholars that are at universities that study this issue have said they doubt that the yes side's claims are accurate in any way. I can also direct you to the various editorial boards that have come out on the no side. I think there's a lot of valuable information in those as well. Those are very fact-based and very dispassionate.
Also to that issue, it's helpful on our website. There's a report that was analysis is done by a couple professors at Case that sort of goes through these arguments as well and gives the number rationale behind the tax savings, behind sort of how this would work. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. I have a couple copies with me if it's helpful. Where this happened before, and like, I think it's clear that I disagree with this, and an AHF who brought this up disagrees with it, but where it happened before is in California, when the voters passed Prop 8, the AG refused to defend it. Now, that to me is great. Like, I disagreed with Prop 8. Prop 8 was a prohibition that passed in 2008 against marriage equality. The AG didn't defend it. Like, I'm glad he took that stance. I agree with that stance. At the same time, it was a case where the Attorney General didn't defend something that was the will of the voters. Since then, it's been a best practice in ballot measure drafting to have a provision that compels the Attorney General to protect the will of the voters. So that's why it's there. That's when we've seen it happen before.
Okay, Michael?
Victoria, could you speak to what Leo has been saying about all these groups who are against it? You know, Carico, and that's very alarming. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's powerful stuff.
I mean, one thing I encourage you to do, this is a tough issue. There are people who I have a lot of respect for on both sides, including Leo. And so I think that that's true. Like, and this is not cleaved in a normal bipartisan fashion. So I do encourage you also to look at our, yesonissue2.com endorsements. It'll be the most up-to-date list of endorsements, which also include aid service organizations, includes nurses organizations, doctors organizations, what have you. I can't tell you why people decide to vote no, to endorse no. What I think we do see is a couple things. There's a lot of people, and I know it's a system, but it's been constructed, and Pharma has done, and Pharma as a drug companies have done a very good job of giving a lot of people stake in their success. So that means that they have not only hired lobbyists and operatives, but they also give a lot of donations. So there are organizations that are nonprofit organizations that do a lot of great work. But they're sometimes 50-60% of their donations come from Pharma. I don't blame them for not going against Pharma. This is a David and Goliath fight. Not everyone wants to go challenge Goliath, even if they're great. And so I think that's the case too. And so I can't speak to why anyone endorses no, but I think that is a dynamic that operates in this space, where for some people the system may not be perfect, but it's sort of working. As they say, we don't want to challenge that system. I think for others of us, we have to say, if we can make a change here, we have an opportunity to make a change that's good for patients.
You know, one of the problems that I see is that the problem that we have is money in politics. When you look at companies like Sears or any of those companies, they want, for every dollar they bring in, they want to make an average of 35%. Companies like Costco and Sam's will average 15% on the profit. When you have some states that limit how much credit companies can charge, they are putting a limit on their profit. We have never put a limit on the profit for the pharmaceutical companies. And you have told us, that whatever they can bear. So there's no limit what can happen. Now, in terms of cost, let's take Plavix. Plavix takes about $20 a pound to make. And 20 pounds of Plavix will make over 6,000 pills. And you're going to pay $20 for 30 pills. So think about the profit that's not being allowed for us to keep in our own pockets, but it's going to the top 1%. And I'll just pass that on then.
Hi.
Closer to your mouth, please.
Okay. I work in healthcare, and I have a question. Is there any evidence that VA patients or subscribers are their formulary is more limited than somebody like me that has commercial insurance? Because just one unintended consequence I'm concerned about is if this went through, would our formulary be limited because the pharmaceutical companies won't want to sell to Ohio the more expensive, newer, drugs that are on the market?
Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Yeah, no, I think that does make sense. And I think I can answer a couple of questions, yours and yours with this. It's well known that the VA has a reduced formulary that comes with the deep cost restrictions that are associated between them and the pharmaceutical industry. And so to that point, and to your point about Caracol, I'm just looking at a photo of the mailers that are being sent out by Caracol to folks that they think are their allies and advocates. And so this just reads, Caracol opposes issue 2. It could raise the cost of prescriptions and restrict access to medication. That's what they're talking about, the formularies, the current formularies that we have being restricted. And so I think that answers both those questions. Yes, that's a well-known fact that the VA has the restricted formularies. And to your point about why an organization like Caracol, this is literally what they're putting out there, what they're saying. They say Caracol, goes on, says Caracol supports drug pricing reform on a national level, and we cannot support issue 2, which could have adverse effects on our clients and many other Ohioans. So that's just what they're saying.
To this, I mean, the VA has a formulary, Medicaid has a formulary, you know this, you work in healthcare, insurance companies have formularies. They work out with providers of what they're going to offer and what it's going to cost. There's nothing in this legislation says that for prescription medications that the VA covers, we get as Ohioans, the state of Ohio, I should say, the state of Ohio pays that same price. There's nothing in there to limit the state of Ohio from buying prescription medications that aren't on that formulary. So there's nothing that says they can only buy the medications that are on the VA formulary. It just says that when they do buy those medications, they get the same price as the VA. So that's one piece. I think the other piece, and this is sort of a downstream benefit opportunity that we have, is that when this legislation passed for the VA, we got a published list of their formulary and their prices. So, no sign says there are secret prices we don't know about, but I think what we know is that secret prices aren't good for consumers. Like if all the information is held on the industry side, that's not something that helps consumers or other users. So I think one of the benefits of this is, when this becomes a law, it says that the state of Ohio has a formulary that has a list of medications, that has a list of prices, so that that's transparent, and other organizations can say, hey, this is the price they're getting. We know that as a sort of a point of information in our negotiations. It's sort of a downstream benefit that I think we see helps to reform the system.
Yes, I'm looking at the vote no, number 5 statement that says it puts current VA discounts at risk, and military veterans who get their prescriptions through the VA face prospect of potential cost increases. I see commercials all the time that would be these vets, our costs are going to go up. And then I think vote vets are saying no, they won't. Can you be very specific? Is that true or not? Can the cost go up for vets?
Look, the drug companies always have the ability to set the prices wherever they want for most people. That's the system we have now, where they can set the prices wherever they want. For veterans in particular, they are protected by legislation from Congress in price increases. So they have protections on their prices. So there's nothing in this legislation that would cause prices to go up on anyone. And I mean, the drug companies make that threat, so maybe they can explain how they would do that. But they are protected, those prices are protected by federal legislation. There's nothing in this initiative that would cause their prices to go up. It just gives the state of Ohio that same price.
So I think what Victoria was saying, there's nothing to stop the drug companies from raising prices and affecting the veterans through the VA.
No, there is. I said there was congressional legislation that stops that.
To 24%. What about the additional percent, the voluntary discounts that the VA gets far below the 24%? We've never been able to answer that because there is no answer to that. There's no protection. The actual reality here is that the VA doesn't just get the 24% discount. Neither does Medicaid, by the way. Medicaid gets a 23.1% discount that's also federally mandated, and that's here in the state of Ohio too. And that's the primary, that is what we're talking about. No mistake. We're not talking about retirees in any immediate sense. We're not talking about individuals or employers. We're talking about folks through state programs. The VA is concerned that those voluntary discounts that they get below the 24%, we don't know exactly what they are. The analyses that are out there suggest that they're probably more of an average around 40%. That those voluntary discounts, that 40% will go away and go up to 24%. That is, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who's a mathematician, actually a cost increase. When your discounts go away, you're paying more. And that's what the VA is afraid of, and there's nothing to suggest that that couldn't happen, or won't happen.
Last question here.
I have two concerns. Number one, if the drug companies raise their prices, that even the 24% discount will go up. So there's nothing that guarantees the current price. So either way, people lose. And the other thing is, with this legislation, what concerns me is 3/4 of the population of Ohio, which are people who are already squeezed by insurance problems and rising costs, are in no way benefiting and may have the potential to lose even more money. So you can't compare this with what's going on in Canada, because Canada, everybody pays about the same price. So I think that we need to keep our eyes open about the 3/4 of the population that's already being squeezed. Many of those people are the working poor who are not covered by state programs.
Well, I don't. So I'm not sure. I want to make sure that I approach your first point. I think that the federal mandate is 24%, and as long as that mandate remains, I do think that that stays.
Is it $800 or is it $500?
We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, and that's a point that we agree on.
The drug
Kind of.
companies can raise their prices and they.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So I hear what you're saying. Actually, so I understand better now. Yeah, I mean that mathematically works out. The second part of your question, sorry, I haven't eaten very much food here. The second point was on.
No protection whatsoever for the 3/4 of the
Yes,
population.
yeah, absolutely.
Many of whom are working poor.
Right, I absolutely agree with that. There is no protection from them. Victoria and I argue on kind of like this different side of the same coin here. She's saying there's nothing in this legislation that forces prices on anybody. I'm saying there's no protection here to stop drug prices from doing whatever they want, including not selling a particular drug in the state of Ohio. Versus Victoria's explanation, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was there's nothing here that stops Ohio from buying drugs. Those are two different statements.
Thanks. I know you're trying to wrap up here. I think what we have, the situation we have now with pharmaceutical pricing and the situation that the drug companies have us in is a situation that they can charge as much as the market can bear. And that's the price we have. Like, they are always looking for that ceiling. What we do in this, right, but like what we do, and there's no reason to think that they aren't already charging the maximum price they think they can get. That's what they are doing now. And so what this does is say, like, we are not going to allow drug companies continue to do that. We are going to say, for at least what we can do.
You're making one huge assumption that we are at the top of the pricing, and I would like to challenge that.
Okay.
But the other thing is that this is a rather poorly drafted piece of legislation when 3/4 of the population, many of whom are very poor, and go not only without medication but without food, and they're eating dog food.
That's why this is on the ballot.
This is bad. No, this is bad legislation because it leaves them out.
I understand. I
This is
see
bad
that's how you see it. I will just say, and like, I'm not, you're hearing both sides, and you guys are gonna make your own decision. But, just think about who has the interest in here of you voting yes or you voting no. As progressives, I hope that you follow the money. Like, the no side, their strategy is to confuse, and they have spent $26 million plus to do that so far. And I hope that that as you're looking at these issues, look at both sides, look at these arguments, and consider who benefits on each side.
The people can stay and answer the questions individually if you have another question. I want to thank both of our speakers for being very good, and I have to tell you, I would sit in the back there. I want to scream because I'm still confused. Okay, so, and I want to thank you for being a wonderful wonderful questions. Hold it, be quiet, folks, quiet. Our next three programs are excellent. What Judges Do What by Judge Fennon Rucker. I know he's coming because I saw him at And then on October 17th, we have the first woman Hamilton County Commissioner, Denise Streethouse, coming. And after that, we have Pro Kids, court-appointed special advocates for foster children, Kathy King. We have wonderful programs coming. We don't have any time off until the last 2 weeks in December. We have speakers all the way through, and I think we have a really good set of speakers for you. We have food in the back. Not much left, but please take home. I don't want any of it wasted. And Dan's teenage son can't eat all of it. So please make sure. So thank you again to our speakers, and thanks to you for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.